Hey everyone, and welcome back to Sew Renew Fashion. This is part 2 in my series for sewing for beginners, and now I'm going to get into some of the basic stitches that you need to know and how you can use them. So let's get into some basic stitches. Now, whenever you're starting a seam, you'll want to stitch a few forward and make sure that you're pulling these back threads, and then you're going to want to back stitch. Now this is my back stitch button. It's kind of well used, so you can't really see that it's pointing backwards, but you're going to want to back stitch, and this will secure your seam so that it doesn't fall apart. This would be the equivalent of tying a knot, but this is obviously way faster than tying a knot manually. So for a straight stitch, you're just going to try to stitch in a straight line and using your seam allowance. So right here you can see there is different seam allowances on my machine, so I can use these as a guide. What you can also do if you struggle with following a seam allowance is you can put tape at your desired seam allowance so that it's easier to see how far over your fabric should be. Once you get to the end, you're going to want to back stitch again to secure your seam. So here you can see I have my straight stitch. Hard to see because I used white thread, but this is my straight stitch. And that'll hold this seam together. Now say I'm making a piece of clothing and the instructions say to serge or finish this edge. If I do not have a serger, what I can do is set my machine to a zigzag stitch, and I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. You can make it a big or small zigzag, just depends on the look you want. You're going to want to get your seam right in the middle of your presser foot. Now this is because the zigzag is going to go on either side, and you want it on the one side to go off the fabric, and then on this side you want it to go into your fabric, and this will cause it to wrap around the edge and secure it. And I'm going to want to back stitch, of course. You can see a little bit of threads poking out. I would probably do this a little bit smaller, at a smaller stitch length, so that it's better encapsulated, but this will stop your edge from fraying as much. So this is an easy way to finish the inside if you don't have a serger, because the unfinished side will just fray. But this is encapsulated. It will fray a bit. I didn't do the best job, but you get the idea. Now I also use the zigzag for stretchy fabric. Okay, so let's do a zigzag stitch. See, this zigzag allows the fabric to still stretch and the seam stays intact, while I'll show you what happens with a straight stitch. See, we have our straight stitch here and our zigzag here, and it rips while the zigzag stays intact. So this is why on stretchy fabric, you want to use a zigzag stitch. So for a basting stitch, this will be a straight stitch, but I'm going to make the length as long as possible. So that's 4.5, or you can do 4. And for gathers, a basting stitch, you're going to want to not back stitch. This is one of the few times you do not back stitch, and you just want to sew a straight line down your edge. You want to leave a tail. Now you're going to want to sew another line of basting stitches right beside the original stitch line. Okay, I did a messy job, of course, but I have my 2 lines of basting stitches. So for gathers, you're going to want to go to one side and choose the 2 lines of stitching on the same side. So I'm choosing the 2 top threads and I'm just pulling. You want to choose only the top or the bottom, or else it's not going to gather. So I'm just pulling my fabric along. You can see it's creating gathers. You can do the same thing on the other side. Just make sure it's the same. But I'll grab the 2 top threads, gather this side. And then for whatever project you're using, you would usually stitch your gathered part to your fabric, and then you can take out your basting stitches or leave them in as long as they're not visible in your garment. So this is good if you're making a skirt or a blouse, or honestly whatever. This is how you make gathers. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for my next video where I'll teach you how to troubleshoot some of the common sewing issues that you're gonna have, and I'll also give you some tips to make sure your sewing goes smoothly. Bye.